Welcome back to the Tribe of Spoken podcast. This week we are going to look at the formula or equation, rather, for success as we define it at the tribe. And when looking at these things, ambition plus passion plus purpose, for us, those things equal hard work if you apply them. If we multiply those things, our ambition, our goals for ourselves, our vision for ourselves, the passion, the desire within that we have to succeed and to achieve and to help others. And then our purpose, which should be serving others. If we take those things and compound them over time, then that will lead us to success. We're going to take these things, ambition, passion, and purpose, and condense them down to work ethic, because that's what is at your heart. Those are your behaviors. Those things embody your work ethic, your behaviors, actions, and habits. And then time, we're going to look at time in the sense of using it for good, which would be your commitment, how committed you are to something. And we're going to look at these across a spectrum, a target spectrum rather, and apply them to 4 different quadrants where work ethic is along a y-axis and commitment along an x-axis, but then we add in these rings of the target spectrum to give us direct impact on ourselves and the people around us. This could be your program for sports. This could be your organization for those in the business and corporate world. The second rung would be your influence. So maybe not something that's going to break your culture or your team, but something that would just influence. Impact would be something that could possibly cause fractures. Influence, this may just be something that keeps holding you back, or things that influence others in a positive manner, but doesn't necessarily cause a lot of change within everyone. And then inconsistencies and things that are just not very influential. These can be things that are just bad habits or things that don't necessarily influence others around you, but that can be bumps for you. And so if we look in each quadrant here, as we define work ethic and commitment, these things equaling success, we get 4 different pathways or behavior pathways on the way to success, because you can still find success, oddly enough, in any one of these quadrants. The brevity and degree to which you find success is going to be very different. But in this quadrant where we have high work ethic and high commitment, this would be your workhorse. These people just never take off. The people that are always on the grind, per se. And so impactful actions for them are things that challenge their norm. They cause themselves to evolve constantly. Things that might be just influential for them are doing the same things repetitively. Their growth will eventually uh, just lessen if they do the same thing over and over. It will not necessarily, their growth won't decrease, but the level at which they grow will decrease. And then to be non-influential, this would be having too many irons in the fire. Can you do too many things and try to grow yourself in too many areas at once? Yes, we need a broad spectrum of growth, but can we simplify what we do all at one time? If you aim for 5, 6, or 7 different targets, you usually hit none very accurately. And then we would look in this second quadrant. This is where we find people with high work ethic for themselves, but low commitment to the greater good. And so these would be a selfish boss, a selfish captain. These are people that when they impact others around them, they grandstand. It's obvious that they are all about team me. Their actions, their words, their attitudes, demeanor, everything is about them. And that can cause a lot of dissent within the others around them. Something that might just be influential for them, though, would be showing off. When they're in a crowd, do they like to just merely talk about themselves or their accomplishments, or even put others down to make themselves look better? That's not necessarily going to cause fractures in your culture, depending on the action of the words. If it's cancerous per se and spreading to others, it could, but it is going to change the outlook of others on this person as a leader and their ability to lead. Now, things that might not influence others, but that do cause inconsistencies in their success is for them to be a working powder. And you've all seen these. These are the people that think that they're the only ones that work hard and that nothing else around them or no one else around them is doing as much as them. And so they walk around complaining or pouting if they don't get their way or if they don't get the success that they want. When if they would just be a little more committed to everyone else's benefit and the well being of everyone around them and the greater good of the corporation, team, environment, whatever it may be, then they would find themselves over here. It's a level of their commitment that is lacking. And then you get the skating by bosses. These are ones that they cause impact in their environment, their culture, their organization by blaming others. Nothing is ever their fault. And that can cause a lot of harsh feelings and probably some meetings with their administrators that they don't necessarily look forward to. Things that might just be influential, though, is their failure to finish projects. Do they halfway do things? They start out pretty well meaning, but then taper off, and you just never see the finished product, or you never see things come to fruition that were promised. And those things are influential because there may be other people on the team trying to work on the same project, and they fail as well because of this person's failure to see things through. But then you get inconsistencies and non influential actions from the quiet quitter. These are bosses, leaders, people within an organization that never really seem to get anything done. You kind of question what in the world do they actually do, yet they still remain in a leadership role. And they don't cause dissent and they don't cause people to fail per se. They're not a direct influence, but they sure don't help anyone's cause except their own. And they just get a paycheck every month. These are quiet quitters. And then you have the high commitment but low work ethic crew. These are people in leadership roles that they're just here for the party. They're there for the social aspect and they only put in enough work to keep them out of the hot seat with anyone. These are people that delegate things rather than taking ownership of things. And now, delegating, I don't want to put negative connotations around delegating. Delegating can be a very valuable skill because delegating is a skill. You have to know the abilities of the people you give things to and their ability to get those things done. But in this case, I'm using delegate in a means of these people that are just here for the party don't have a really high work ethic. So when they're given a task, they find others to basically do it for them. Then there are those that are just influential. They make excuses. There's always a reason why they didn't succeed or why they didn't meet goals. And it's maybe a little bit their fault, but there's some kind of outside factor that caused them to not get the thing done. That's making excuses. And then lastly, to be non-influential but inconsistent is you find crutches. These people, these leaders, and I even hate to use the word leaders, but these people in leadership roles, they find things to lean on when they fail. They find people that are successful to lean on when they fail so that they don't fail alone. They have someone to lean against that's stronger than them that will pat them on the back and say, hey, it's okay. Maybe next time you'll get it done. And that way there's less shame because they have a crowd with them in their failure. And so those are crutches. They're leaning on someone stronger than them so that they don't feel so bad about themselves because of their poor work ethic. They want to see the team succeed. they just aren't really willing to do the things necessary on their part to help add to that success. Then we're going to talk about some various aspects of this equation. Ambition, passion, purpose equals hard work times time equals success. We're going to talk about some of these things today and what they look like in a more practical setting, specifically ambition and purpose, and what those things together look like in a leader. Knowing your purpose, being able to set aside your own selfish desires for accomplishment in order to do what's necessary for your team to be successful. We're going to look at that in the sense of a captain, or even according to Captain Alan Thompson, a captain in a different role. They're in a totally different environment. In the military world, what is the role of an officer for their people? I hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you for joining us again at Tribe Has Spoken. All right. Welcome back to the Tribe Has Spoken podcast. As always, I'm Coach Kerry Castillo, and with me every time, all the time, is Captain Alan Thompson. We actually did a pre-show show, finally pushed record early and caught some nuggets, and we're gonna try and bring those to you today as clear as we can, as thoroughly as we can. Captain, what you got?
Man, I don't even know where to start. Like we got off on so many tangents on the pre-show that we're having to refine some of this and narrow it down. And we kind of got to the point where we're going to talk about equations for success. Mm-hmm. And there's several elements to this, and more or less, if we're not defining success ahead of time, we don't ever set that metric of being able to let us know if we've actually reached it or not. And there are elements of success being a positive outlook. Most of us strive to be successful. We want our teams to be successful. We want the corporation that we work at to be successful. But there is also a element to not taking the right approach to get there. And there's even there are even pitfalls on the way to success. You're missing some key components, or maybe even you overstride for success. So we've got a couple of different ways to get there. So
I think what we really hit was, what is the equation for keeping the main thing the main thing? I love that you said set the metric. Ooh, boy, that's powerful.
Yeah, because you got to have a way to measure it. Mm-hmm. You know, if in the corporate world, or maybe you coming up as a youngster youth, you're thinking, man, what is it? What is success? Is it being rich? Well, what is rich? I mean, what I realized in that category is that there are really two types of being rich. There's the financial aspect of it, like, oh, that person has a lot of money. What's a lot of money? You'd ask somebody 50 years ago, $1 million was a lot of money. You ask somebody now, that's not a lot of money, and you may not necessarily be considered rich, especially if you lived in, California, or, mm-hmm. Someplace where $1 million doesn't go that far. But there's also an element of time. Somebody can be rich in time, and somebody being rich or successful in the amount of time that they have to be with their family, to do the things that they love doing, that they have a passion for. There's an element to being rich for that as well. So it just depends on your metric, and it's hard to have both of those, the financial aspect and the time availability aspect.
Mm-hmm. So there's the question, and what is your main thing?
What is your main thing?
Yeah. So one of one of the big points that I had as we were discussing what the many different faces, I guess, that success can take on is, is your purpose married to your win column?
So, yeah. With that kind of comes down to being one of the negative aspects. You know, if the W is the most important thing, then everything else is sacrificed in order to complete that task. And on our show, one of the biggest things that we talk about that's most important to us is developing the person, developing these youth into great leaders. I would really find it hard to believe that somebody that puts the W first can also achieve a goal of creating and moving these younger people into being great leaders, because that's the wayside that goes by the wayside.
It's really a matter of being growth oriented versus task oriented.
Yeah, well, I think it just depends on what you believe. And for me, I believe that the W, the winning, it's a byproduct of effort. And if your goal is only to win, as opposed to your goal getting maximal effort, it's going to be really difficult to achieve both of those. But if your goal is to get the maximum effort out of all of your players, you will end up getting the W. Whereas if your only goal is to get the W, you won't ever achieve maximal effort. And that maximal effort doesn't just lie in what happens on the field. I want my leadership, my junior leadership on the military's maximal effort to be in all facets of their life. It has to be a balance. It's not just in, I'll do anything it takes to win the game. I'll do anything that it takes for my team is important to me. I want maximal effort from them in supporting their team, the rest of their people, putting other people's first, in self-development and growth off the field, off the physical aspect of things, in their education and in their own leadership development. So for me, I want that maximal effort in all facets, not just
the win column. Yeah. And that, I think that spills over into so many other environments. You know, if you talk about the corporate world, success for a lot of people is going to be the bottom line, right? And then what's your quarterly growth and product and financial outcome. But then you can measure that against, well, what was your employee retention rate? Did you help people grow? And what we're, of course, going to find as we talk about this is that there's a direct correlation between growing your people and success.
Yeah, I think that with that, if you're looking from the corporate side of it and you're looking at bottom line, elements that you miss with that is talent acquisition. And your other side of that equal sign is talent retention. So how much money have you spent in order to get that talent to you if you are unable to maintain that person being with you for whatever reason? And many people leave because of culture. They don't, they may not define it that way on why they're leaving. I don't like it here anymore.
I'm unhappy.
That's culture. And so now you're losing talent. And even if you are working on developing that talent within there through continuing education, and having these people work towards other goals for your company, if they don't stay, now you've developed talent that is left. So all of those ultimately on the bottom line is a loss.
You created a really great equation, as we were talking in the pre-show, for effort, because we established that without effort, and when we say effort, we don't mean just the work hard every day grind. That's not how we're defining effort, but that there is no success without maximized effort.
Mm-hmm.
And the equation that you came up with for effort, and I want you to talk on this, was ambition, passion, and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And you can add whatever mathematical representation you need there, whether it be plus or multiplied. Hopefully those things exponentially grow our efforts. So let's talk about those: ambition, passion, and purpose, because you were just mentioning some of those.
Well, for me, for us as leaders, and we want to draw that maximum effort, there are those, in my mind, those three elements that we need to be able to touch on, that we need to draw from the individuals that we're trying to get that maximal effort out of. Their ambition. Do they want to meet that goal? They want to try to get to the same place? Are we all going in the same direction? Do they want to be the best? And how high do they want to go? What is their end goal? Their passion, how much do they really love what they're doing? And on the corporate side, man, that's a whole ball. I mean, so there's so many people that go to work and they don't love what they're doing, but they're going because of a different reason. They're going for financial gain.
It's transactional.
That's how they see success, is by their ultimate goal is to make more money, but they don't actually love what they're doing. So on the corporate side, are you getting maximal effort from that person? They don't love what they're doing. You obviously can't get maximal effort. And ultimately you won't reach that bottom line. Is not ever going to be achievable to maximize your growth as a company. So,
so you'd say that they're lacking passion.
Oh, most certainly.
Then.
And can you imagine that you have, which I'm sure that you've seen this, a player that is not feeling it. They're out there, they're going through the motions, but that day they're not loving playing soccer for whatever reason. They ain't digging it. They don't have a passion for that. You ain't gonna be getting all of it out of them, you know? Right. And on the military side, if you're in the infantry, you better love walking, because you better get to stepping. You got people that don't like to be physical. This is not the job for them, because everything about being in the infantry is about being physical. So if you've got somebody that is not, doesn't have a drive to be physical, to do the things they need to do to be fit, to be able to do that job, they're not going to be maximize their effort. And then finally, the purpose. You know, if somebody doesn't have purpose, and again, I think it's a good one for the corporate side of things. It is what they're doing for their job. Does it matter? You know, is what they're doing going to ultimately have some greater purpose in life, or in are they making a difference? Because if they're not, it makes it hard for them to put forth that full amount of effort. So for me, that's what it is. Ambition, passion, and purpose equals maximal effort. And I think if you're able to draw that out of each one of the members of your team, the team that gets closest to that at the end of the year is going to be the one that ultimately walks away.
So a caveat to just one of those pieces, I want to talk about ambition for a second, because that can look like so many different things, depending on the environment you're in. If it's a sports team, it could be a person's ambition to attain a college scholarship or a professional contract. It could be accolades, you know, different awards at the end of the year. It could be a goal record. scoring record for the school, whatever it may be, doesn't matter. But what is their vision for themselves, really? When I talk about ambition, I'd like to add a question to that. I guess tagged onto that is, do you have short-sighted vision? Because for me, to get maximized effort out of someone, part of their ambition has to be tied to their growth as a person. And so if they have a short-sighted vision for themselves, or if I establish a short-sighted vision as the leader, I establish a short-sighted vision for our organization, team, and these people that I'm leading, then their ambition is going to be short-sighted. And they're not going to try
vision, that aspect of vision, that's a really interesting concept, in that it's something that you, as the ultimate leader, as the head coach, is something that you got to put forth early on and make sure that, would you say that falls under expectations as well?
Yeah, it has to, because if you're, and this is something that I personally tell people when they try out for the team, is my objective for you and this organization's objective for you is for you to leave here a better person than when you got here. If that is not what you want for yourself, then you're in the wrong place. And so if they don't have that, I guess, ambition initially to seek to do those things, or to be stronger, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, and to help people. And that's one of the examples we use is, hey, we're going to do a lot of community service, and I'm going to ask you to sacrifice your time. If that's not who you are as a person, that's who we are here. You know, if you don't think you can do that, then you're in the wrong place. But if you want that for yourself, then you're absolutely in the right place, because I'm going to give you every opportunity that you can think of to grow that.
That's an interesting concept as well. We don't really have that option on the military side. I mean, some of them have what we call failure to adapt. And hey, this is who we are, and if this isn't you, then you're going to need to go somewhere else. But you have the option where you're telling the people, like, this may not be you, but this is who you will be by the end. And if this is somebody that maybe they're not that person, but it's somebody that they want to be, that is a fantastic option to give somebody to be able to grow into a better person. And I think that's definitely the route to go.
So you have to set the metric. What is success for you? You have to be growth oriented over task oriented. You have to have maximized effort. And I think we've done a better job of defining what we mean by effort by establishing what ambition really looks like, and then what passion looks like. It could be your energy. Mm-hmm. It could be the energy you commit to doing little things. That's not, passion is not being the hype person every day. We're going around the office or the team and firing everyone up, or giving the best halftime speech or whatever. Those things, sure, they embody passion, but when you talk about maximized effort and having a more than short-sighted vision, a timeline that extends out for past short-term goals, then passion can look like giving the energy when you don't have it to simply go talk to a teammate or a coworker that you notice just isn't getting things done, or is struggling emotionally, mentally, in life, whatever it may be. That can embody passion.
In the past, we have talked a little bit about how you go through and select your leaders. and as far as team captains. And I know that many times through your process, and if you want to lead into that, you can kind of talk a little bit about your process of selecting your captains. But one of the things that you do, I know that you have them apply for it, and you go through an interview process with them, and then you spend however much time, a week or two, testing them, putting them in that role, kind of seeing how they react to it before you go and actually make that selection. But one of the things I find interesting is that many times the things that you are looking at as you see players out there that are not performing, you're more or less feeling or observing their effort in a sense, or how they're reacting to having a down day. They miss some goals, and you can see their energy dropping, their positivity or whatever, however I'll let you talk about that part of it. But that comes back to drawing that effort out. And that's something that you end up having those conversations with those potential future captains, and setting that as an expectation of them is to see that. And it's interesting that as we went through the pre-show a little bit, that we discussed a little bit of that on how to get that effort out. And it's something that you've done, but not necessarily defined in the equation. It was something that you were doing naturally, but prior to us discussing drawing that effort out. But go ahead. I want you to talk about that part of it, because it goes right along with this.
So initially, anyone on the team can apply, but and it's as simple as an initial Google form that they can fill out. But in the Google form, this is also part of the test. I want to see if they're going to read the description of the process, because in the form is the description of the process. You're going to do a Google Meet interview with one set of questions. And these are scratching the surface kinds of questions. Why do you want to be a captain? Why is it important to you? What do you want out of this role? Very centered around the person's ambitions for themselves. But then also in the description is, after the initial Google Meet, which everyone will get one in a Google Meet, you'll either be asked to do an in-person interview or you won't. So they have to get a second interview. You have to earn a second interview. In the second interview, they sit down with my assistant coach and I, and we ask them to, and this is some of the questions that they get, like, hey, how should I dress for this? And like, well, how do you think you dress? How you think you should dress for it? I'm going to find out how much this matters to them real quick. You know, I shouldn't have to give a directive of the effort they're going to put into this process. If it matters to them, they'll put the effort in. They'll have their nails done. They'll have their hair done. They'll be dressed nicely. They will have prepared themselves to represent themselves the best they can, right? That's the effort. Mm-hmm. So they'll sit down with us, and all of the questions are scenario questions. They can be, the spectrum is pretty wide, from how would you react in a game situation to another teammate getting themselves in trouble with the referee or the coach, to cultural issues. How would you handle this conversation? Tell me exactly what you would say. And I know that's on the fly. How would you do this? But that's life. That's situations that are gonna, you might, as a player, you walk into a locker room and you have no idea what everyone else's day has looked like. And everyone could be hugging and high-fiving each other, or they could be circling the wagons about to have a throwdown. You don't know. So you have to be able to react on the fly. And so we ask them questions that require them to answer on the fly like that. They're all scenario based, but the most important questions, and I'm going to ask them, are at the end. They're the last 5 questions. And they're all centered around, how are you going to react tomorrow when I call you tonight and tell you you're not selected. But that hits them like a gut punch because they haven't even considered it. And all these other questions, they're wrapped up in, this is what I would do and this is what I would say if I were the leader. And now I'm asking them, what is your, and I ask them very literal questions. What's your body language going to look like? What's your text message going to be to the ones that are selected? How are you going to help represent their leadership on the team? And what I mean by that is, if I select Susie and Tina didn't get selected, how is Tina going to empower the leadership of Susie to everyone on the team, even though she didn't get accepted? What I'm asking her to tell me is, how are you going to demonstrate selflessness to everybody else on the team? And that's really tough. It's a tough question to answer because, one, that they have to immediately tie themselves to being selfless. For some, that's a struggle. It's also, and I've had some come to tears because it's a tough question. I hadn't thought about, what if I'm not selected? What am I going to say? What would I do? And they begin to think about just the place of, I guess, hurt feelings that they would have. So for me to ask them, even with your feelings hurt, how are you still going to support this other person? That's hard.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know? And then what is your reaction going to be when this captain asks you to do something or holds you accountable? And they get hard, the questions progressively get harder for them to imagine having to handle that situation. But I need to know this, and I need to see, and I'm watching their reaction. Where do their eyes go? What's their facial expression? What's their body language? Do they get immediately closed off when I ask this question? Do they fold their arms, when I ask them this question? And I get to see the thought they put into it as well. But then the last part of the process is, sorry, this is really lengthy already. I didn't mean for it to be, is I observe all of the ones that reach the second interview in practice. And I'll create scenarios to bring out some of the literal responses rather than the verbal response.
You're verifying that their actions correlate with the answers that they gave earlier.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, that's exactly what it is. So I might put, if I have someone I'm suspect of, especially, I might put them on the less skilled team every day that week and find out, what is your attitude going to be when you're down? Or I might put them on the most skilled team and then start a scrimmage, but give their team a 3-goal deficit and only 5 minutes to erase it. That's going to get heated real fast. And I'll see the character traits that I need to see. If they give up another goal, do they just shut down? Okay, we're 4 goals down now. We can't come back. Or when I blow the whistle for the timer to be done, are they still gutting out a sprint to get to a loose ball? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's things that, those things, they bring to the surface what I'm looking for. And so I'll have my answer of how they would respond from those things. They can't hide from those things. Mm-hmm. I may even pull them. We talked about this in the pre-show. I may ask them to go and be selfless. Hey, your team's losing 3-0 right now, but I just subbed you off. And I subbed this other girl off because she's having a really bad day, and I need you to go find out what you can do to support her. Well, I need to be on the field. No. What you need is to support your teammate. So I'll find out what's important to them right then. Yeah, we only got 2 minutes left and we're down a goal. What's more important? And so that's all part of our process, and it might take a week, it might take 2 weeks. I've extended it out to 3 months before I select the captains. And you talk about bringing to the surface the things I need to see. then yeah, that's where their ambition, I found out what it really is. Do you just want a band and a title, or are you going to spend every day of that 3 months supporting your teammates and just doing the right thing every day and keeping the main thing? What is your ambition? Because if they're coming in and they're like, hey, when are you going to decide? Hey, when are you going to decide? Every day. Hey, when are you going to decide? Well, I think I already did. You know?
Oh, yeah.
I think you just helped me with that process. But that's how, you know, we do that. And honestly, what we've seen from it is girls have come to me and said, I wanted to apply. This is where that short-sighted vision versus long-term vision comes in, and how those processes help grow everyone's ambition. I've had kids come to me and say, I wanted to apply, but I just didn't think I was ready yet. So I'm going to spend this year doing what I need to do to get to the place I want to be so I can apply next year. Well, you're already there. You know, yeah, there's some things you need to refine probably, but mentally, emotionally, at your heart, your ambition is to be a better teammate and a better leader. They're already ready.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They're already ready. But
how
it means
long have you been going through this process? Because you've spent time refining this down to where you are now. I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years. So what did that process look like? And do you think that process could be used across you know, all sports? Do you think that this is really good for you know, for the female population, maybe not as good for the male population? Or do you think that it works really good for soccer, but it may not work as well for basketball? Or do you think it's good to go all the way across?
You know, I think the process itself and the meaning behind it could be applicable to any environment. I mean, we've talked about this in other podcasts. It's just part of the leadership growth process and sharing ownership. You know, we've talked about that. How do you build a better leader? We'll share some ownership. And so I'm giving these people that are applying for this role a little bit of ownership every day and seeing what they do with it. You know, are you going to be an ambassador of us? You know, and are you going to protect what I've given you? I think it'd be applicable to any sport. And I've actually helped some other coaches through that and refine their process of how they choose captains. I've seen more sports at the schools I've been at refine their process or even change it up a little bit to adopt some of the things and reasoning behind. That's the most important part in how they select captains, just, you know, just from being a colleague of theirs and talking to them about it. But over my career, I really started my captain selection process with learning what not to do. We mentioned that in the pre-show as well. I saw too many times, and even through my playing career, luckily, where you and I were rugby wise, the people that were captains, boy, so much to learn about how they were selected. And I look back on that now and think, God, that's such a great choice. And I see why now. Not to call him out, but like Tootsie, you know, I would have never, as a freshman, that kid came in and coach looked at us and said, he's going to be a captain. What they thought of what? Of the what not to do team. But the guy was just a natural leader, and I didn't see those things in him yet. And coach did. And he was so right. Like, he was such a great captain. I didn't get to play with him as long as you did, but I just saw he was so intentional. Like, I'm getting off on the side tangent here, but Tootsie was so intentional with the relationships he formed with people, you know, and that's what coach saw in him, as his heart. But over my career, I basically learned straight out of the gate how not to choose. I see too many times that people choose their best employee skill wise or best player skill wise as their captain. And then this might be the first person to catch a card in a game, or my players come off and go, their captain is out there cussing everybody on their team and us. So what kind of ambassador are you then? And so what I looked for, and I really didn't have such a strict, I guess, process initially in my career, but what I looked for initially was who is the person on the team with the highest character, like the character that was so strong as far as being just a good person, that when they walked into a room, everybody listened to what they had to say because they knew they were going to say something that was worth hearing, or that was going to be helpful or a good directive. They didn't listen out of fear. And that was noticeable. That was obvious. They were listening because something important and worth me hearing is going to be said. And those people, it's amazing how that correlates to just having a good heart and being a good person, being a servant. And so that's what I looked for, and would give that role to those people. I never really adopted more than one or two captains, though. I felt that by dispersing the leadership like that I might dissipate it some, I might water it down. But what I've found, and I read a book by Sam Walker, it's called The Captain Class. He talks about some of the singular most influential captains of all time across all sports. And I think that's so hard to do now. I think people are more likely to invite sharing leadership now. Certainly people are a little more outspoken about the way they feel about things now. And that's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I find that valuable. And I find it valuable to have multiple captains. And I think that's something I've had to evolve with, is the thought process wrapped around that. Why move away from the singular captain? I don't see it as watering down leadership now. And in fact, I think it strengthens the leadership within my teams by having multiple captains, because it's so very hard for one person to be great at all aspects of leadership. And so where you might have your hustle captain, the one that is leading by example, right? In everything that they do, they're first to every sprint, or they're working the hardest. They're putting in the most sweat equity. That's valuable, but they might not be great at the relationship game. And so you have one that's not the best player, not the fastest player, but they take the time. Like I mentioned, if I would take them out of a game and go, hey, I know you got 2 minutes left and your team's down a goal, but I need you to go talk to so-and-so because they're on the field crying, and obviously there's something going on that's not soccer related, or that's affecting her and everybody around her. And rather than seeing that as, yeah, but I need to go in the game, they're like, yeah, absolutely. Or they've already beat me to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that shared leadership is important, because you'll have people that have strengths in different facets, and each one of those are just as important as the other. And if they're strengthened in their role, and this is what you and I were discussing some in the pre-show, is how do we give, I guess, how do we empower those people's purpose? And that's how you share some of that leadership with them. And so
we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Tribe Has Spoken. We really dove into what ambition and purpose look like for leadership, and how those things feed into not just you being successful, but how to help a team or an organization, a group of people be successful. And it takes a lot of setting aside what is best for you individually. really being the embodiment of a team player. We looked at it from the military aspect with Captain Alan Thompson, and then from my aspect as a coach and what a captain would look like. And the two roles at the heart of them are, what is your vision for the people you lead? And how do you go about putting aside what you want as a person for what is best for them? And in his regard, it's getting his guys home, getting his soldiers, his guys, quote unquote guys, his soldiers, men, women, getting them home to their families and helping them grow as leaders. And then from my aspect as a coach, having a captain grow and having them lead the people on their team to help them grow into better leaders. We're going to look at the other aspects of our equation to success, specifically passion, more in depth in our newsletter. Be sure and catch the show notes on YouTube, where I'll put a link for our newsletter so you can subscribe. We hope you have a blessed week. Thanks for watching.